Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of A Happy Moment. My name is Dan. Glad to have you with me today. I've had a few writer guests on recently that co-authored books together, but this is my first time interviewing an actual married couple that writes together. From Wicker Man Studios, please welcome Park and Barb.
Oh, hello.
How are you guys doing today?
We're good. We're glad to be here. Very glad.
Very glad to have you here. And before we dive into your work, I understand that you guys met through mutual admiration of the Sandman comic.
Yes. We were both reading comic books at the time. Yeah, I was what was called a Vertigo hag. I read comics when I was a kid, but then I started reading Vertigo. I started reading Sandman, and you can take it from there. In college, I felt like everybody needs a hobby, and I would get back into comics from having dropped them temporarily at when I graduated high school, and I started reading. I'd heard good things about these new, for grown-up, sophisticated comics of Vertigo, and I liked the mythological, supernatural stuff going on in some of them, and I wrote in the letter columns when someone started a fanzine newsletter type thing. This was on Xeroxed on paper, and that's out to people through the postal mail. And so I met Barbara that way, and we started writing to each other. In fact, we did share a little creative work, and that drew me to her more. And then we started sending uh, recorded messages to each other, and then we started writing longer letters, and we calling each other, and then she came and visited me. And we had this relationship. Situationship for a very long time. And then I came here. Yeah.
How long have you been married now?
I don't know. It was Y2K, so we've been married forever. It was. We had our honeymoon during Y2K. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So what was the cause of Y2K? I'm sorry, everybody. When all your computers shut down forever.
At what point did you get the idea that you wanted to start writing together?
No, that was her thing at first. At first was my thing. And then I would help when she started doing comic books. We both thought I had a little bit of facility for describing rights to the artist and so forth, the action. And then I got in a little bit more, and I wasn't good with plots at first. So I followed her example, and she was the best person for bouncing ideas off and offering constructive critique. And eventually I started doing my own stuff, and then I would edit her stuff, and now we're going to work together to one degree or another. Yeah, it started out with comics, and then I managed to get a job with the manga industry, working for Tokyo Pop and Viz Comics. And I went with Viz Manga. And technically I did too, editing for as a freelance for Del Rey Manga. Yeah, so we spent a lot of time doing it. And then we started writing novels. And a couple of our comics are coming out.
Okay, very cool. And you kind of spoke on another question I was going to ask you. Park, you mentioned that you were good at writing fight scenes. Is that how you guys write together? You do a lot of the action scenes and Barb kind of does the rest, or do you split the duties a little bit?
To be more true. It's still somewhat true. Yeah. It's less than it used to be, though. I'm good with plot, characterization, dialogue, and then I will put things like, describe this. I don't want to. Or make this the coolest fight scene ever. Or I want a ghost here, but I want it to be original. So it's tell him to do the impossible. At this point, she does an amazing acrobatic thing. At this point, he has a spiritual vision. Stuff like that sometimes I feel. So. Yep.
Okay.
But then sometimes we say it's like on the old show Homicide, where that usually I'm the primary, he's the secondary. But sometimes when he's written, I've given him, I'm a consultant. Like when he did the graphic novel Swipe, I was mostly a consultant. That was the example I was going to use. Yeah. I did a cyberpunk graphic novel called Swipe, and I was the primary on that.
Yep.
And I just bounced everything off her.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What was the first work that you co-authored together?
What? You mean like closer to equally? That's kind of tough.
Let's see. I would think
Gunstreak.
that it wasn't Gunstreak. That comic's mine. Although you may get co-author on it because you did some of the fight scenes. I guess it was The Talking Cure.
Yeah, that's probably pretty fair. Our novel called The Talking Cure.
Yeah, which is basically about a supernatural investigator with repressed memory problems who goes to a psychiatrist, and at first she says, yeah, sure, right, the supernatural. He proves he really is a magician / supernatural investigator. He becomes her client and tells all these incredible supernatural adventures. And
as a part of getting to his issues,
yeah,
that he's a little in denial about, afraid to face.
But yeah, that basically I do the rough drafts most of the time, and then I hand it over to him and say, make it look good, make it sound good. And then we read it, and then I say, I don't like that, I love that, I hate that.
Let's make this shorter.
Let's make this shorter. And so we keep on bouncing the rough drafts back and forth until it's good.
Do you ever have any conflicts arise when you're writing, like any disagreements?
Early on, yes.
Seldom now. Partially because if one of us says, I don't think this part is working, the other one is better at figuring out why and a workaround. Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, but
sometimes I would write a scene that would just kind of start going off, rambling nowhere, and she's like, this isn't going. And
I said to him, I can be your wife and be supportive, or I can be your partner and tell you why this isn't working.
And I wanted it to be good, so
yeah.
She told
now me. He's easily.
Oh no, but so much so by comparison with the old days, it's like that.
Yeah. That I realized that this is what we love and this is what we do, and I love him and he loves me, so we're both committed to it.
And I learned to outline and work on a structure before I tried getting to into the middle of a book.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Before you started using outlines, were you always a pantser?
She has always outlined, I think. Well, she's always started with an outline, at least, I think. I did not, and came to regret it, and now I do.
Yeah, but my outlines aren't like other people's outlines. That I write everything I know about the book, and it gets to be about 60 pages.
Sometimes she'll write the end.
Yeah, I
definitely say, now I know what I'm working toward.
Yeah.
And sometimes she doesn't do it.
Yeah, that all depends on the book. Every book's different.
On your website, wickermanstudios.com, you describe your work as relationship dramas in spooky worlds. Can you explain that a little bit? What made you decide to write that way?
Some advice, which usually is not helpful to me, but this time it was talking about branding. It's like, look at what you've written. Look at what your projects are. It wasn't writing even, it was just branding related. Look at what your projects are. Do they all have something in common? What do they all have in common? And I worked out two things. All of them could be described as dramatic relationships in spooky worlds. And so I'm like, oh, I think we write dramatic relationships in spooky worlds. She's like, yeah, we do actually. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Let's write that down. So that's how it came to be.
I can be a bit of what's called a slipstream author, which is I love genre work and I definitely work in genre, but at the same time, characterization, realism, magic realism, making people believe that this is real matters to me, and therefore it has to do with characterization, realistic settings, and that's the domestic part. But I also write about the supernatural an awful lot, so domestic dramas and spooky worlds.
Let's talk a little bit about your graphic novel called Hungry Ghosts. I learned something new here when I was reading up on this. You mentioned it's an expanded imagining of Victorian-era European writer Lafcadio Hearn's story from a book called Kaidan. And I've never heard of the author. I've never heard of the book, but they both sound very interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about how this book came together for you?
Okay. Once upon a time, when we were working in the manga industry, I started watching Asian horror films. And I found one called Kwai-Dan, which means weird tale or ghost story. And it was the coolest film ever. So I said, who wrote this? And it was a Victorian author named Claudio Hearn. He was a Westerner who moved to Japan and started collecting Japanese folk tales, but they were scary ones. I got the book, and I found this one story about a monk who used to be a samurai who went up against monsters, oni, yokai. And I said, why hasn't anybody written more about this guy? He's so cool. And next thing I knew, I was writing that, and you were writing the fight scenes.
We were writing a version of that with this character and expanded it from there.
Mm-hmm.
We've been told it's kind of a good introduction to the folk tales of that era.
Yeah. And I feel really good about it. And then it took a long time for it to get into print, various reasons. And I decided to write a novel called Hungry Ghosts.
Right. We're like, well, we have some more ideas actually, and but Barbara likes to do things. She's like, I think I have a good different way into this story, to starting the story and introducing this character, and she did it another way. So it's another story loosely based on this same story and this same character that goes kind of a different way and stuff. So there's Hungry Ghost, the graphic novel, and Hungry Ghost, the prose novel, which are not the same, except for one character.
Both of us have been into world mythology until from around the age of 8 or so. Absolutely. And so maybe it was just reading Neil Gaiman at an impressionable age, but I do know about world mythology. And so writing about this stuff was stuff that people in the West just didn't know about, and I happen to know about. And the ideas came to me, and I said, nobody else.
And we picked up more because we were adapting a wide range of different kinds of manga, and it wasn't just a job. We were reading a wide range of different kinds of manga and so forth.
Yeah, I said, as a manga adapter, I really have to just focus on everything Asian, everything Japanese. So we were watching films, reading stuff, reading websites, just trying to understand. And I think I did a good job.
Right, because we're supposed to be adapting to make sure, not translating, but making sure that after it's translated, the funny stuff is still funny, and the scary stuff is still scary, and the romantic parts are still romantic,
Yep.
and the tragic parts are appropriately dramatic and tragic. And you can't do that if you don't have a good understanding of both cultures.
Yep.
We grew up in this one, but that left the other one.
Yep.
The name of the protagonist is Tekasura. What qualities about him specifically appealed to you that made you want to write about him?
Well, I thought, this is so strange. Here's somebody who spent his life loyal to, his master and fighting and just killing people and thinking that this is the honorable thing to do. And then he puts that away and becomes a monk. But he's a monk who is conflicted because monks aren't supposed to kill. Okay, so he's killing monsters. At the same time, he's kind of this wandering samurai who would have been a wandering, a Ronin, a wandering samurai.
Because he has no lord anymore.
Yes. And so I said, that's the conflict. How do you make these two things that are totally different work within your soul? So that's how it came to be. That's why I liked that character.
Can you talk a little bit about the art style of the graphic novel? On your website, you mentioned that you wanted the graphic novel to look like a Shaw Brothers film.
Here's the thing. It's a great story because I realize as long as I get a terrific artist who makes the prose come to life and make the action scenes come to life, I can do anything I want because everybody's going to say the art's great.
We found a Canadian artist, Jeremy Michel, and it just so happened that his style of coloring himself as well, his use of color, was not only good, and then not only also what we wanted, but I feel it's also even a bit like certain scenes in the movie Quite On, as they're doing this red sky over the forest, or this like strange blue lighting and stuff, and he just does these very dynamic uses of colors and brushstrokes or whatever kind of instrument.
Also, Jeremy's stuff reminded me of Mike Mignola. Is that the guy's name? Except with action. It's very difficult to make action in comics look like it's actually moving.
It's true. Jeremy's got a decent sense for movement. It's partially because he's got these, I only know how to talk about it in painterly terms, these kind of almost impressionist brushstrokes.
Yeah.
So that the brushstrokes kind of evoke movement of what he's doing.
Yep. Yeah, I just loved his work so much. And when Park managed to get him to do our stuff, I was just blown away. I said, my stuff's good.
He means he was able to see, oh, look, it looks like a comic should, like I envisioned a comic should, of the story that I wrote should look.
Yep.
Was it ever an option for either of you to do your own illustrations?
Oh, God, no.
We're not visual representative people. I fancy I can describe it to others, to real artists, but that's not our skill set.
Oh, no, not movie.
If we were really good at that, it certainly would have been useful at times, but it happened that we were not.
Nope.
It's all in the word area.
Is Hungry Ghost just a one-off, or do you plan to have like a series for it?
Not right now.
Not at this time.
I mean, I think it ends at a good place, both in terms of the novel and the graphic novel. But if people wanted it,
there is room that could happen at the end of either or both. Yes.
Yep.
I do.
Yes.
I have.
I'm so proud
I've been a little busy for more of that lately, but yes, it's true.
Have you created your own systems?
Mostly not. Well, okay, yes, a little bit. One kind of micro system where you just roll 1 out of 100 for everything, and that just determines the whole thing. Just for people who just want a really easy entry point that can do anything. But mostly I use a system or kind of a hodgepodge of systems.
Do you guys have a regular gaming group that you're part of?
Not such.
No, he did a lot in college.
Barbara knows more than you might expect her to know from hearing me talk about it, but she is not that.
I wasn't lucky. I wasn't lucky. I couldn't find anybody who'd do something. I would have.
Right. Throughout the most recent years, it has been difficult to find group for a number of reasons, and it can still be challenging today with the technological history we have nonetheless. We're so busy writing our own worlds anyway.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, I'd like to see our characters as RPGs because that'd be really cool. But,
it could be
baby steps.
Yes.
I wonder if you could adapt one of your own stories into a RPG universe.
I guarantee that I could.
I think he's jonesing for it.
It's more a matter of motivation and time, honestly.
And desire out there for it. I mean, if people wanted it.
If people wanted that,
I
could have it done next month, probably. Give or take a month. But yes. That's definitely something that could happen in the future. I encourage that possibility. Are you yourself into the gaming scene of teacher? Aha, I see. I wondered. Well, you mentioned Dragonlance, so I thought that might be a thing.
But what sort of character are you playing?
Oh, that's a good question.
Well, I don't have an active group right now, unfortunately. And the last time that I did play, I was the DM. So,
GM. More like a game master or a dungeon master. There's a
well, we were playing Warhammer. I forget what they're called in Warhammer. I think they call them something else. It just might be Game Master.
You're fine.
Yeah, it's just that I don't play, but I have actually seen games.
She's
And
watched play.
I saw one with a dungeon master, and he was vicious. I saw one with the game master, and I'm just saying vicious in terms of I'm going to kill all your characters.
As opposed to the GM, who is more, let's all have a good time and tell a good story. Neither was me, but
No, you played a cleric in D&D.
there was a time.
Yep, there was a time, but you were always the cleric. Human cleric?
As I recall, yes.
Okay, not like a halfling or anything like that.
Nah.
See, he does talk to me about this
I could talk about these.
a lot.
We've recently read the first two books of The Hobbit and then Lord of the Rings, Fellowship. Then we
he loves this stuff. He's dragged me into it.
Then we read a lot about trees, and we said we're going to take a break from this for a while and do some other things.
So many descriptions of trees.
But they're really big, beautiful trees.
It's true. It's true.
Those trees have shaped the Western fantasy canon, I assure you.
For good?
Debatable.
Okay.
I read The Hobbit a long time ago and I enjoyed it, but I tried reading the trilogy. I had a hard time getting into it. I just found the reading a bit of a slog at times, but at some point I'll definitely give it another shot.
If you found The Hobbit easier and more approachable to you than Fellowship, I need to warn you, it's not going to get easier.
Yeah, that's the thing. My husband, I like him reading stuff to me when I'm making breakfast because my kitchen is
You're
very
in the
small.
kitchen, you're folding clothes, you want something audio.
Yeah, and so he read The Hobbit to me. I said, this is great. Then he said, I want to read you Lord of the Rings. And I said, how long is that exposition going to come on? I basically said to him, spoiler alert. So, at the end of this book, is it all going to be resolved?
I was like, for 2 more minutes. She's like, oh
no, please no.
She's like, I like Bilbo's birthday party. The party's nice.
Yeah. I mean, I like Sam and Frodo. But the first one, I'm like, actually, this is a lot better than it was expected.
And then we started walking. Yeah.
But yeah,
climbing mountains, going down tunnels.
Yeah, and you said Strider's coming, and I looked at that. So I did, but the thing is, I said, "Where's he going?" And it's like, no, he's not going to be in it for a long time. And I'm like, Strider, come back.
We had a lot of enjoyable times with adaptations of The Hobbit and, to a slightly lesser degree, Fellowship, the Rankin Bass, the other stuff.
Yeah, we did the abridged version with Nicole Williamson
and the abridged audio radio version.
Yeah, we had to find a lot of stuff to do during COVID because we were inside.
This was the earliest days of COVID that we were inside a lot.
I mean, gosh, we listened to the BBC adaptation of the first 2 Star Wars things.
We did.
You made me listen to that.
I encouraged it strongly.
You said, please listen to it with me. I did. I liked it a lot. I thought it was excellently written.
What did you think of the Lord of the Rings movies?
We felt they weren't quite for us.
You didn't make me watch them.
I didn't make her watch all of them.
Just the first Lord of the Rings film.
Just the first one that
I said, how much do these people watch?
It was kind of overwhelming, honestly.
I mean, there were things I liked about it, but I'm like, where's Gandalf?
Yeah.
Again.
Don't let Gandalf leave the screen. Come back, Gandalf.
Because Ian McKellen. The man, And you talk. Yeah, we always are.
You want to ask the question?
You guys are fine.
Okay.
Well, you had mentioned Lord of the Rings. Can you tell us a little bit about what kind of people inspired you, or other authors, movies, books?
Oh, yeah. You said, baby.
Well, as long as we're talking about reading things to Barbara and encouraging or making Barbara read things, influence on me that I have had Barbara experience is Roger Zelazny.
Oh yeah, he loves the
uh, Nine Princes in Amber.
Yeah.
I own some of him reading his own book, and Barbara has heard Barbara has heard that too, and then after a while I just started reading it to her. But that was a big influence on me, and my dialogue style, and kind of my protagonist style quite a bit, honestly.
Yeah, whenever I'm writing a male character, you're like, that's really good. You know a lot about how men act and things like this. But can I Zelazny it up a little? I'm like, sure, baby, anything you want.
Yeah. Let me guide this up a little bit, just a little bit more, because you're going for a slightly macho-er thing in this particular scene. And I'll come in and I'll toss a few more lines.
But you like Zelazny, you like Pratchett, you like Doug Adams.
Yes.
We both love Doug Adams.
These sci-fi and fantasy humorists. Yeah. There are others I could mention, but those are three good ones.
Yeah, those are three really good influences.
Okay.
Also, you like, and kind of like Harry Harrison.
Harry Harrison is not to be neglected.
Because you made me read The Stainless Steel Rat, which I like.
Yes.
And you also liked Edgar Rice Burroughs. You made me read John Carter of Mars.
John Carter of Mars, yes.
Yep, the first three.
Yep.
He made.
Oh, she was super into John Carter of Mars.
Oh yeah. And you made me read Barbie. You made.
Yeah, but it went too hard. You got started. I didn't have to.
He's fantastic. And yeah, I love the John Carter of Mars books.
Yes, that's segueing into your
stuff. I am horror and mystery girl. That I love Raymond Chandler. I love Shirley Jackson. I love Turner the Screw. I love the Gothics. I love Jane Eyre. That sort of thing. I loved Cyril of Echoes by Richard Matheson.
The book.
Yeah, yeah. And I love Matheson. I like Block. I like Charles Beaumont. I like all the Weird Tales writers. Which is how you meet interviewing Robert E. Howard.
Right.
And Victorian ghost stories, Edwardian ghost stories. People that nobody read anymore, like Rosemary Timperley and Mary Elizabeth Councilman. They're ghost story writers. Absolutely.
So
and James too.
So I'm more high fantasy and classic sci-fi, especially stuff written before 1980.
Yeah.
And especially if it's funny, like Elsbreg Camp sometimes.
Oh yeah, it made me read Elsbreg.
Yeah, she's more scary.
Yep.
Scary, spooky, gothic, other stuff, which is part of our love of the old classic TV show Dark Shadows.
Oh yeah, he's made me watch all the science fiction stuff. I've made him watch all the horror.
And that stuff. Before I met her, I wasn't really all that into horror. Now I'm
not at all.
Totally sure. Horror. Let's do it for you.
Sure. You're not right.
Barbara mentioned Shirley Jackson. That's another one I had a hard time getting into. I read We've Always Lived in the Castle, and
it's a weird book. All of her stuff is incredibly weird.
You're okay. I absolve you of all blame.
Yes.
It's the Haunting of Hill House that
really
first in line.
That's my baby.
You get a pass for the cast.
Weird lady, and that is a weird book. So I am not looking down on you.
We're not judging you for that.
Not judging it.
I mean, it had some interesting ideas in it, but the story just kind of seemed to meander, and
Yes. I mean, I remember reading everything after Hill House and going, "Where's my plot?"
The Haunting of Hill House. We like her short stories.
Yeah, her short stories are quite good, and her humor is quite good. But yeah, when I was a teenager, I loved Haunting of Hill House. And then I read all the other books, and I said, I don't separate these things. I mean, have I had a stroke, brain aneurysm? No, I'm sorry, I'm being facetious. Obviously, I don't. But yeah, they're weird, and to this day, I don't understand.
There's no judgment.
Okay, I'll give her another shot then.
I think she may.
Well, honestly, the stuff about her kids, her wild, crazy kids, that she wrote as a mother for Redbook, hilarious.
Yeah, they actually are.
And insightful of human nature. And sometimes it's a little bit disturbing, honestly. as a horror writer, those are good too. But yeah, the stuff that isn't the Haunting of Hill House, the longer stuff, you're just like,
Remember when I was reading, what's his face? Howard Lovecraft, H.P. Lovecraft. That I was reading Lovecraft because I said, it's time. I've read everybody else. I have to read him. My husband kept on going, what are you doing reading Lovecraft? You need to read Robert E. Howard. And I said, honey, I like horror. And he said, Robert E. Howard likes horror. And that's when I started reading Robert E. Howard.
Well, first of all, you should always be concerned when anyone you love is reading H.P. Lovecraft. Honey, are you reading Lovecraft alone here? Don't you want some more lights on or something? Are you okay? Are you going to be all right? You're reading Lovecraft. What's going on?
Actually, one of the things that happened to me was one time you came home from work and I was listening to David McCallum reading, I think, The Rats in the Wall or something with my headphones. You're like, honey, I'm home.
She jumped about a foot. If someone you love is reading Lovecraft, make sure they know you're home. That you were at home, because that could be disadvantageous. Yeah.
I've never had that really happen to me.
That's
big Lovecraft fan, but I understand why people are.
You understand how it got to be what it is today.
Yes, I do.
What?
And again, we're not letting me talk.
You're fine.
He's here to interview us.
You're fine. Let's get back into your work. Let's talk about another one of your stories that you did, A Song to the Siren. That one about a couple of documentary filmmakers investigating the death of the founder of a rock group. Tell us a little bit about that one.
Oh, golly gee. I always said to myself, someday I'm going to write a found footage novel. And I said, because I'd read Patti Smith's Just Kids, someday I'm going to write a novel about a mythical rock band. And I decided I was going to write a novel as an entire interview with somebody, make it as realistic as possible, and make it as slice of life as possible, and then start getting weirder, and more bizarre, and more supernatural. Or the leader of the band might just be going mad. And it's really good.
It's ambiguous.
I'm very proud of it. That I remember saying to my husband, Haunting Hill House is an ambiguous horror story. Throw the Screw is an ambiguous horror story. Oliver Onions, Beckoning Fairway is an ambiguous horror story. I want to write the four. And that's what I did.
The late leader of the rock group seems increasingly paranoid and prone to imagining things, or else he's not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Reed Sinclair,
and the reader,
the founder of the big carnival.
The reader can decide for themselves.
Would you say that this is your favorite work? You got excited when I mentioned it.
Oh, I'm excited about all my work, but this one was hard to do, and it was such a challenge, and it's so different. And people have said, "What is this? Is it quiet horror? Is it a love story? Is it a story about mental breakdown?" And I said, "Yes,
yeah,
of course it is." So I am especially excited about it. But it's also the newest stuff that I've done, so it's always the new kid on the block that I'm most excited.
Barbara likes to be different. She's like, when she's done writing something, she's like, I want to write something. I said, well, you can write something, honey. I want to write something no one's ever written before. I'm like, I know you do, sweetie, and you probably will. But I want to write it right now. She's happiest when she's writing something.
I'm a bitch to be around when I'm not writing.
As long as it's something no one has ever done before.
Or rather, I'm just like, oh, I'll never write again, and then something brilliant comes along, and I say, I gotta do it.
Sometimes it blindsides her.
Yep.
In Song to the Siren, there's a kind of a mysterious character in there named Belle. Are you able to tell much about her without spoiling anything?
A little, maybe. Would it help if we started the sentence, Reed believes?
Reed believes Reed is somebody who is of Irish-Scottish heritage, has believed, because his grandmother told him so, that he's Reed Sinclair, the boy with all the clairs. That is, all the psychic gifts.
Clairvoyance, Claire, the audience.
He believes this. And after his brother dies and seems to come back as a ghost, this Lian Shi type character, unless it's a demon, unless it's something else, starts pursuing him and wants to drive him mad.
Unless it's all in his head.
Unless it's all on his head, which it can be.
At this point, we might as well talk about another of Barbara's huge influences, which is the film Curse of the Cat People.
Oh, I love Curse of the Cat People.
About, among other things, a little girl who has heard lots of fairy tales, and some people wonder if she's having trouble telling the difference between fairy tales and reality. And she may not be having quite as much trouble as people think she is.
Yeah, she starts imagining an imaginary friend who might not be quite so imaginary, and that was a huge influence.
It was quite a large influence on Barbara and on Song of the Siren in particular, I would say.
Yeah.
And on that note, what are some of your favorite horror movies?
Oh my gosh! Let's see. Actually introduced him to Halloween.
Halloween, yes.
He loves that film, and I'm so surprised that he would. But all I like.
Before I met Barbara, I thought slasher films. Halloween is special. Halloween is different.
I love Asian horror films, especially things like Our Point and Inner Senses, and the more obscure ones, and Kwaidan. And I like Aztec horror, such as Carlos Enrique Taboada's work, especially Poison for the Fairies. I like British films like The Haunting of Julia, aka Full Circle, and what's the other one? Dark Places from the 1970s. Weird ass film. I mean, if you've ever wanted to see Christopher Lee and Joan Collins as semi-incestuous brothers and sisters in a film, that is the film for.
And that's not even the main event.
That's even the weird.
That's barely the B plot.
That is
Korea, South Korea. South Korea having their television, such as the ghost story-centric
The
Master's Son.
Love that.
We have that on Blu-ray.
Yeah, I love old Val Lewton films. I love old Universal horror films. I love things like Ginger Snaps from Canada. I love the genre films. That's been one of the newer things.
Italy's genre.
Mario Bava.
Hatchet for the Honeymoon.
That's so much fun. Dario Argento, Deep Red especially. I mean,
the original Suspiria.
I was doing the Song to the Siren books. I was watching so much giallo, and those things are so crazy. So yeah, I love that stuff. So that's that.
If you're a country and you've got some cinema of horror, Barbara has tried it. Who are our little Swedish friends? Let the Right One In.
Let the Right One In and Troll Hunter. I love those films. Because I'm Scandinavian.
And those guys from Spain.
Yeah. Jesus, things like that. I watch a lot of horror films.
70 made from TV horror.
Oh yeah, I love that. Like when Michael calls.
Don't go to sleep.
Don't go to sleep.
Have you ever watched Tombs of the Blind Dead?
Yeah. Blind Dead films.
You found a fan of the Blind Templars, yes.
Yeah. Oh my god, I love that. I love that series, especially the first two.
One is good. 2, I like a little better. 3 falls off. 4 kind of comes back some.
I mean, when we were watching The Fog, we said, "This is Blind Dead."
The Fog is very much the second Blind Dead. Yes,
it really is. I mean, The Fog's a great film, but
John Carpenter's.
What is going to happen in the second film? Just is so crazy, and just the whole thing, and
it's got a good ending.
It's got a good ending. Yeah. At first, we were like, "What the?" But then we saw it the second time. We said, "Yeah."
We liked it even better. We liked it even better the second time.
Yep.
See, when I saw the first movie, I rented the DVD and it had the original version in it, and then it had the English version, and I thought the English version really butchered it.
Yeah, no. That's happened a lot with a lot of foreign horror films, especially the genre.
Including the Jello film.
Or, yeah, but I'm so glad you love the Blind Dead films or like them, but because there's so much.
You just got some.
Well, actually, so I would consider Tombs of the Blind Dead. I think that's probably my favorite zombie movie, but I actually haven't seen any of the sequels yet.
I recommend the second one.
The second one
Very much.
Oh, have you seen let's see, The Living Dead, the Manchester Morgue? It has about 12 different titles. I saw it, it disturbed me. It's about, oh, it's so weird. That the dead are coming back because the government is doing this thing to control insect population by making sonics.
Yeah.
And the brain stems of the dead are back, and so they're eating people.
Are reactivating, yeah.
And
Okay, I'll have to look that up. I'm not familiar with it. Another one of my favorites, also from the 70s, is Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires.
oh, we saw that.
Fun is a good word.
It's fun. See, the thing is that, I love Hammer, and we were watching all the Shaw Brothers films, so we had to see the Golden Vampire. We just watched all of those things for the longest time.
Yeah, definitely a fun movie. Park and Barb, can you tell us a little bit about what kind of future projects you might be working on?
Well, the company that did our Kickstarter crowdfunding for Hungry Ghosts, both versions, said, "Oh, you've got some other projects? Okay." And so Barbara's graphic novel Gun Street Girl.
Yeah, we're going to be Kickstartering that.
Our Swipe, we're going to be doing a Kickstarter this year for reissuing that, if you will.
There's a demand for it. There are sequels to The Talking Cure. There are sequels to Song of the Siren. And we have just a ton of stuff ready to come out. It all depends on when the publisher decides to get it done.
To set the
right now that you can get The Talking Cure and Song to the Siren, and you can get Hungry Ghosts through the website,
through the publisher.
I've
sent him the link. Sorry.
Okay. This is the part I hate. I love talking. I hate promoting. I love talking.
What was your experience like using Kickstarter?
It was fine. It worked. We had two stretch goals and we made them. One of them was, hey, here's a prose novel with the same character, and that made, and so now there's two versions. So we were set. We were perfectly satisfied.
The key to it is that the publisher of Lucha Comics basically said, can you just kind of give a daily update? So I was just writing all these little things about
posts or mini articles.
Yeah, like how to survive a nation horror and things like that. And I think that made it a little more audience friendly, that there were human beings that actually enjoyed this stuff behind.
Would you have any advice for aspiring writers out there?
Well, my advice is have fun with it. For the first 3 months, don't treat this like a job. Treat it as something you get to do. Just have fun like you're a kid. Don't read writerly advice. Just go and say, this is my time. I'm going to have fun. And then if you find out you love it, then you'll find out how.
Don't treat it like a task. I must write 1,000 words every day. Oh, yeah. Then you'll just cause too much pressure for yourself.
Yeah, just for the first 3 months, just play. Then, if you find out you're actually pretty good at it, take it serious.
I like that advice. That's good. And so that's going to wrap things up for us. Park Cooper, Barbleen Cooper. Website is www.wickermanstudios.com. And do you have any social media that you like to use?
The Twitter account is still open, but we have a Facebook version and Mastodon, Pinterest, TikTok. The TikTok's brand new. We haven't done much with it yet. I'll send you all our social media links.
Yeah.
Okay, I will definitely include those in the description for this episode. Park and Barb, thank you so much for joining me today. Appreciate having you on.
Oh, we've had a great time. If you ever want us on again, we'll come and talk over you.
Yeah.
Had a great time.
Good.
Thank you. So long.
All right, take care, guys. And thanks everyone for joining me today. You can find more about the podcast. Just search for Happy Moment on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.